Stay tuned, stay tuned, stay tuned. I'm here with the coach, John Brett.
Man, I'm here with the vet, Mr. Ian Griffin.
We're a little tight tonight.
At the talk.
Yeah, we're at the talk, and we are going to talk about Ukraine and Russia, Coach.
The Red Army is gone mad.
They have lost their damn minds. It's Red Dawn everywhere, and we're going to talk about this, and we're going to bring our friend Ira on. And so, with that, you got any major questions you want to start out with?
I just didn't know the ghost of Khrushchev was still alive. I mean, I don't know. He's acting a fool.
Yeah, he is. So I'm going to throw it out here, Ira. How did we get here?
Well, we got here either by hook or crook or by mistake. Either way, I didn't vote for it, and they say 81 million people did, but I have yet to be convinced that, that we have a leader. But anyway, nonetheless, we're there, and it's a problem that we have to deal with as a nation and as a world.
So, Coach, I'm going to ask you how did we get here, and I'm going to throw how I think we got here.
Well, I think we got here by this is not something I'm sure Putin decided to do last month.
No.
I'm sure he's been thinking about doing this for years.
Yep.
But there's a reason that it happened under Joe Biden's watch and didn't happen on the previous president's watch. It's the difference of playing against somebody that's a tough, smashing them out team and one that's a finesse that you can run the hell over and intimidate them. And I truly believe that he already knew that Biden was weak because he had to deal with him before under the Obama administration. But then when he saw what happened in Afghanistan and the way the world reacted, he's like, shit, let's just go in now.
So, Coach, what I always say about Democrats and foreign policy.
Yes.
They don't know how to do it. So I'm going to say, I said this the other night on Rad Country when we was on there. And but there's three things I believe that contributed to this. Three. First of all, Putin, this isn't one of them, but he's wanted the Soviet Union to be the Soviet Union again since it tore apart. He needed three elements. The first element is the strength of NATO. Most people will say will be the 30 countries combined, but the strength of NATO is America's resolve. That's the first thing. And America's resolve in NATO was weakened with Afghanistan when you had the British Parliament talking about us and the other countries in Europe talking about us like, maybe we should think about moving on without the United States. That's the first thing. He needed NATO to be weak. The second thing he needed was the right president for the right time. Well, Joe Biden ran up and took that ice cream right out of his hand and said, I am the man. He demonstrated that with Afghanistan, where people will say, we should have got out of Afghanistan either way. Agreed. But we could have done it about 1,000 different ways and not got anybody hurt. We just didn't have to do it the shittiest way in the world. And then the third thing he needed was the resolve of the American people to be at an all-time low. We've come out of two 20-year wars, and right now we don't have an appetite for one. So from my perspective, it evolves around America. It really does. And that's where we're at right now is because we've allowed this, but it's fixated mainly from one guy who happens to be the POTUS. And that's why we pick leaders to be in charge and not politicians. So with that, I'm going to throw it over to Ira, and I'm going to ask this question. What could he have done differently that this would have never happened maybe?
What could have done differently? What could this current president have done differently? A more proactive role early on when he first got into the White House and developing better relationships, closer relationships with Ukraine. This just did not happen overnight. And I'm quite sure that his team and the outgoing team had read him well into the problems that happens over in that area. Of course, Ukraine is one of the hotbeds of society. But the bottom line is that I think he knew too well what was going on. And I just think he was already a compromised president from the very start. And in that he probably did not either want to care for it. It was either low on the totem pole for him, or that there's something that's been held over his head that in a sense, in my opinion, that he was probably would expose his inner workings and dealings with Ukraine and the other regions over there, because I don't have anything to really say about it. Is that everything that he's done wrong, foreign policy wise, has been flawed. This is just another cog in this machine that's broken. How do we fix it? I don't know. I really don't know. I'm
So
at
we'll
odds.
get to that in a minute, second hour. So,
Yeah.
so I'm going to throw it over to the
Mhm.
coach, but I'm going to say this: it's almost, what was that term we learned in high school? Laissez-faire attitude in world politics is the concept that we've taken is we will step back instead of being the role model in America, and we will just allow nature to take its course. But this is coming, coach, I'm just going to say it, from the solidifier. The only guy who could solidify Europe and NATO was him, remember? And he's the only guy that can control Putin. So if this is control, my question is, what is not control? I don't know.
Yeah, this is an interesting time, but it's brought about a lot of things on social media. Wolverines and Red Dawn movie. We're growing up in that. Really hadn't had to think about Russia too much in the last 30 years, or maybe even longer than that, as being a major problem or a major. I mean, could there be a World War III? Could there be a nuclear issue? I mean, you knew who they were, but you just didn't really have that after the Gorbachev was over. This is a new phenomenon for our generation to deal with someone as a superpower that could decimate us as we could decimate someone else, because this is a very delicate situation. And you're 100% right, Vet. This is the difference of needing to have a leader than a politician, because a leader would deal with this thing totally different than the politician that we have now that's trying to juggle the progressive loonies way over here and the liberal to the moderates, and then still be in a country with 50% conservatives. And he's not doing a good job. This uniting bullshit he talked about, if he ever says the word unite again or unify again, somebody should pop him in the mouth.
So, Coach, I'm going to say this. I said this the other day on something, and I believe it is time for the United States of America to have another Eisenhower, Teddy Roosevelt, Grant, George Washington, a significant military leader to be the president. We've had our void. It's no longer time for, let's just say, a naval 03 out of the academy to be it. I think it's time that somebody with some prowess to be the leader. Now, they don't have to be a senior ranking officer, but somebody has given at least 8 years of commitment to our nation that is the most priority. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Ira?
We don't have a leader, period. We have an empty suit in the office. And I guess in this case, so Joe Biden was hoping that politics, again, hoping that the politics would solve everything. I would hope that we never go to a military solution for this here. But again, I don't know. I mean, I'm apologetic today because I'm not necessarily well read into the Russia-Ukraine thing as far as kind of looking at it from the Joe Biden's perspective. All I know is a shitstorm. It shouldn't have gotten this far. And I kind of liken Putin to the term kind of a Putler, Hitler-Putin combination. Hitler wrote Mein Kampf. And in Mein Kampf, he spelled out exactly what he wanted to do. And in the later days here with Putin's dissertation that he actually had disseminated to his military. Again, you hinted on that earlier. That we knew exactly what he was going to do. Just about a paper, he spelled out he wants to reimagine the Soviet Union, but in our time and in his way. I think in the end that Putin, being the chess player he is, well, he would welcome the opportunity for any type of European, or in this case, NATO powers intervention into this situation, or even Americans' intervention into this, because it would fit the narrative that he wants to push. And I think Putin is winning here on the narrative base, and we don't know what to do to counter that. That's just my point of view. I may have not answered the question, but that's what's running around up here, and that's what I had to enunciate to you all.
So I'm going to throw it over to the coach. Do you think it's time for us to get a real leader, a Eisenhower, a George Washington, a Grant, a Teddy Roosevelt, something like that in office finally? I mean, we've had a big void of that.
Well, there's no doubt that it would be the best thing for our country, but what we're not going to have is we're not going to have that again. I just think we've progressed to a place that the two major political parties in our country are going to run the politics, and the way that you get to that house, the White House, to make those decisions you have to play the political game of one or the other, and you have to pick a side. The American side that's in the middle is not what people are getting to choose from anymore. They're picking the party side. And George Washington, that was one of his biggest concerns, was political parties. So my answer is yes, we definitely would love to have, at one time, Colin Powell was thought about maybe coming up in the ranks, a few decades ago. And, that would have been, I think that would have been a good hire. But I also, who in the military now, who would be that person that's gone through the politics and gone through, I don't even think we even have those kind of people that are in the public sphere enough for people to even know who they are.
So I will say that they don't have to be a general, but I think some leader like, and I'm going to evolve to my next question here, but I think a Dan Crenshaw would be pretty good. I think a Tom Cotton would be pretty good. They've had some military experience, not just a naval academy like Jimmy Carter did. They've had real military experience in combat, and then get them in that position. So the next thing I'm going to say is we've witnessed on world stage, and I don't know much about him other than this, but I don't need to know much about him. This guy named President Zelensky, oh my gosh, whoa, they write history books about this here. We have fought battles where they've carried dead presidents or dead kings still into battle to motivate the troops. And I would just be wondering what the morale of the Ukrainian people, or would they even have much resistance if their president isn't out there in the streets, even though he's not fighting, but he's just there for inspiration, that he's standing with his nation, unlike what we saw in Afghanistan. What are your thoughts on the Ukrainian president there, Ira?
I totally admire President Zelensky of Ukraine. He is the quintessential George Washington of Ukraine of this time. All right. And they understand that one, he's a comedian. All right. Of course, he got hired because he had already had the name recognition there too. But two, before him, there was a Russian president. There was a Russian install that they had to overthrow. And on top of that, the Ukrainians have been warring or battling against the Russians, I think, for the past or so 8 years. If you look at the Crimea and then the Oblast and the other couple areas that were in contest. Okay. So the Ukrainians, the people themselves have the resolve. They've always had the resolve, the wherewithal to deal with the Russians, albeit that with 44 million people in Ukraine against a nation of 150 million people and a nuclear power. Well, it's definitely a David and Goliath or a mosquito and the elephant moment. But right now, the elephant is getting stung by the mosquito. And we all know the biblical adage that David defeated Goliath here. And I tell you, I think his leadership inspires the Ukrainian to hold what they got, but they got to have the help. The question is, how do we get the help without getting this further sunken down into a quagmire? So it won't be another Afghanistan, not for the Americans, not necessarily for the Europeans, but we need to make it a quagmire more so for the Russians, and it will be. And I believe it has started now. So it's going to be very interesting, but I like the president.
So I'm going to throw it to the coach, but I'm going to say this. I think that not only he's been an inspiration, the Ukrainians, I don't think we would have as much overwhelming support in the international community if we didn't have his face there, to be honest. I believe it. I'm going to throw it to the coach. What do you think of?
I don't have a lot to say about that y'all haven't already said, but I do agree with that. That was one of the points that I was going to make, is the way that he has presented himself, the way he has stood up there at that podium day in and day out. He has got people all over the world pulling for him. And when he said that he needed something and didn't need something else, he didn't need this, he needed ammunition. Yeah. It struck not only the man inside of us to go, man, I wish I could fight with this guy, but it also takes the reality of some of the issues that we have in our country, say with the AR-15s here. You shouldn't have. I've seen things on the internet now because of some of the ways that he has spoken, that they're saying this is the reason that you need to be able to have these AR-15s in case something like this happens. And you have this strong leader they have that in his face, he's not yelling and screaming like a Fidel Castro trying to be some crazy type revolutionary. He is calm and decisive and strong. I mean, he has that voice. I mean, I can't understand him, but I'm telling you right now, I feel like I can.
I agree, Coach. So the last thing I got that I want to talk about this is they're in Ukraine right now. What happens if the Russians prevail and they start exercise an overwhelming force here soon. And what happens if they say they want Latvia, Lithuania, or Estonia, or Poland, or one of those countries like that that's a NATO member? Will NATO come together or will it crumble? 1, 2, will Putin go, since I'm poking the bear, do I just need to stop there? Do I just go as far as I want to go? I mean, that's the question. So that's the question I got for you, Ira.
I think I can actually answer that question, believe it or not. If I were Putin, I wouldn't stop right there. I would get as much as I can, as fast as I can. I would go into every country that was formerly in the Soviet Union Empire or the Soviet Empire, and I would dare the world, in this case here, to say or do anything, because right now we have a feckless governance of both European leaders, if you want to call, I want to use that term lightly, and the American president. I don't think we have the resolve. We have the wherewithal as far as the material goods and the money, but you know, what's the old saying? I would fear an army of what's it? I would fear an army of sheep led by lions, as opposed to what? As an army of lions led by sheep. Right now, we've got sheep in charge.
I agree. I like that. I'm going to throw it over to the coach here real quick.
Well, the last thing I'll say on this is I don't think he will stop because he's not being made to stop. And that's the thing is, well, what can we do? He's a nuclear power. Do we want to get in another war? No, we don't. So you hear the talk already on liberal radio and even on, I happen to switch over to MSNBC and listen together. And it's like, just like what you said, we came out of the Iraq war, then we had the Afghanistan war. We don't need another war right now. But whatever happened to America, the United States of the freaking America that said we are going to be about democracy around the world and we're going to stop all this communism crap and we're going to compete against it. We're going to fight against it because a better world is a better democratic world than a better communist world. And when you allow somebody like this to do what he's doing and we just sit back and wish for the best and hope for the best and send over some water and send over some rice packets, you're not really keeping democracy alive. What you're doing, you're saying democracy looks weak.
Yep. So, Coach, I'm going to say this and close it out here real quick. I agree with you. I don't think if I was in Putin's shoes, I don't think now me as the American, I don't want him to do it at all. I want us to go kick his butt. But if I was in Putin's shoes, I would not stop until somebody stopped me. You know, and that is just how I would be, because I'm like, they're saying their economy will only last 10 years. So if that's the case, what I got to lose? I'm 70-something years old. I'm going down a legend. I'm going to bring back the Soviet Union, and I'm probably going to take some other countries with it too, until somebody says, I'm going to stop them. And then it might be too late because then you might not be able to stop them. You know, so.
Yeah. I'm not an A-10 pilot, but I'm telling you what, 40 miles of future wreckage. Let me tell you what, man, I had to change my view on that here, because I think, man, if we could just hit them from the air and be done with it while the Ukrainians and maybe NATO provide the ground forces. But if you put aircraft up there, you're going to have the air defenses on the ground. You're going to have other people on the ground to support. I got it. So either way, you can't necessarily conduct an air battle without having some American boots on the ground. But I don't want an Americans to die in a European conflict. But how do we solve this here? I like to say, pray for Ukraine, pray for America, pray for the world. But at some point, you know, Putin's, he's going to get what he's going to get. He's going to get all the countries he can while he can. If he didn't, then he's the biggest fool of the century here. He won't make Times Man of the Year, for if you will. He's the big guy on the totem pole now, is all I can say. And, well.
I will say this, is I think that, what was that Joe Biden preached to us? Over the horizon technology that we've had for a while. Yeah, I don't know why that hadn't been used. But anyway, so we got to close it out here. So you got anything else, Coach?
No, y'all. Hey, this was a good one for me. I learned a lot.
So I'm going to throw the outro in here from the coach.
To the vet.
Thanks, Ira. Here we go.